Sometimes a single moment is enough to transform an entire debate into a political earthquake. A moment that comes so unexpectedly that it leaves not only the opponent but even the moderator speechless. That's exactly what happened that evening, broadcast live in millions of living rooms. Friedrich Merz was debating with Alice Weidel, and suddenly she pulled something out that sent both Merz and the moderator into sheer panic. If you want to know what really went on behind the scenes and why this moment changed everything, be sure to stay tuned until the end. And if you want to hear more of these revelations, don't forget to click on the like button and subscribe to the channel, because what you're about to learn is more exciting than any Florida. The live debate had been announced for weeks. The big topics were the economy, security, and the future of Europe. The studio was modernly lit, the cameras perfectly positioned. Invited guests sat in the front row, and behind him were journalists who analyzed every gesture and every half sentence. Merz appeared as confident as ever. Dark suit, clear rhetoric, hands clasped, childlike gestures. He had dominated the first few minutes, talking about stability, responsibility, leadership. The moderator nodded in agreement, throwing out keywords that Merz used as prepared templates. Weidel, on the other hand, initially appeared unusually calm. She had chosen a simple dark blue suit. Her facial expression was neutral. She let Merz talk, asking only short, precise questions. It was almost as if she wanted to lull him into a false sense of security. But then the moment came. The moderator asked the question that both had been expecting for weeks. "Ms. Weidel, what exactly do you accuse Mr. Merz of?" Instead of answering immediately, she slowly reached into her bag. The cameras zoomed in. A rustling sound went through the studio. Merz frowned. The moderator smiled at first, fell silent, and then she placed it on the table. A small, inconspicuous folder, not a bulging pile of files, but something thin, almost harmless. But the way she placed it made it immediately clear that this was no prop. "That was a move that I blame Mr. Merz for," she began, as she opened the folder, "that he is talking about responsibility here, while his own documents contain completely different things." The moderator immediately reached for the glass of water, hurriedly drinking. His hand was shaking slightly. Everyone in the room noticed that this was not an act. Weidel pulled out a document. She did not hold it directly into the camera, but just enough so that Merz and the moderator could see it clearly. His eyes widened. The moderator looked nervously at the director. "You can see it, can't you?" Her voice was calm, almost relish-filled. "A protocol. A little fake. Not an internet rumor. An official document." The moderator shook his hands. "Ms. Weidel, we have to be careful. This is a live broadcast. Please remember." Quote, but she did not let him finish. "Exactly, it is live. Millions of people are watching the two of them panic. They are wondering why." The guests in the studio whispered excitedly. Some held their hands over their mouths. Journalists zipped frantically. Merz breathed, difficult. "This is confidential. You are not allowed to have this." His tone betrayed that he felt caught out. Weidel smiled coldly. "Confidential. Perhaps, but true, and while they are here appeasing the country, these lines contain things they do not want to say." The moderator wiped his forehead. He had chaired many debates before, but nothing like this had ever happened before. His earpiece crackled. The director called out to him to intervene. But how? Any attempt to stop Weidel would seem as if he were covering something up. Weidel continued to turn the page without showing a page. The mere rustling of the paper made the atmosphere tense to the point of breaking. "You see, Mr. Merz," she said, "the people outside have a right to know what is really being decided when the cameras are off. And I ask you, will you tell them or should I?" Quote. Merz's face was cold white. He looked at the moderator as if he wanted to plead for help, but the moderator just stared silently at the documents, which he had also recognized. An interjection from the audience. "Show it," followed by scattered applause. The tension was unbearable. Merz tried to control his voice, but it broke easily. "This is not the setting for such things. It is irresponsible to campaign with internal documents." Weidel stared at him. "It is irresponsible to lie to the people. Now you have the chance to clarify what is in them, Or do you want to remain silent? The studio was electrified. Millions sat spellbound in front of the screen, without even blinking. Social media began to explode. Clips of the scene were uploaded in seconds. Hashtags trended, and this is exactly where, dear viewers, the real story begins. Because what Weidel had placed on the table was not just a folder. It was the key to a chain of events, the Merz facade. Faltered, put the moderator in a difficult position and shook the political landscape. But that was only the beginning, because in the next few minutes it would become clear that this folder contained more than just papers. It was part of an intrigue that would drag both Merz and Weidel deeper into it than they could have ever imagined. And believe me, the end of this story will surprise you. So stay tuned. Like the video if you were already shocked by the beginning. Write in the comments what you think was in this folder and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss the next part. The seconds after the folder was opened were as if frozen. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. The cameras caught every twitch in the faces of Friedrich Merz and the moderator, while Weidel calmly held the first page between her fingers. The audience in the studio couldn't make out what exactly was written on it. But the reactions of Merz and the moderator told him enough. Merz's hands clenched into fists while the moderator nervously shuffled his papers. Ordered, as if he wanted to cover something up. Ms. Weidel began the moderator with a trembling voice. I must ask you not to read out any confidential information here. No, Weidel interrupted coolly. I know that people outside have had enough of secrecy. They want to know what really goes on behind closed doors. And that's exactly why I have this folder with me. The audience in the studio murmured a few claps, even. Merz then looked back at the camera at Weidel. His eyes sparkled with anger, but also with fear. Whatever they have there, he blurted out. This was done illegally. Everyone knows that they are using dirty methods. They are abusing this format to discredit me. Weidel was not deterred. Mr. Merz, you have a choice. You can now explain why these papers state that she paused dramatically while the viewers in front of the screen literally held their breath. They are discussing plan cuts in areas that they always publicly claim are sacrosanct. An outcry went through the audience. The moderator raised his hands and spoke hastily. Please, we have to keep this within a factual framework. Ms. Weidel, you cannot simply quote internal discussions here, but it was too late. Quote, the sentence hung in the air like a bolt of lightning. Journalists in the room immediately began typing frantically on their laptops. Social media exploded again. Merz turned bright red. So, these are confidential strategy discussions. They have nothing to do with reality. You know full well that these are just war games. This is pure populism. Weidel raised his head. If these are just war games, Mr. Merz, why do you seem so nervous? Why is even the moderator here trying to silence me? The moderator froze. For the first time, he himself had become part of the story. Millions of viewers saw him frantically begging the director in their ear to break off the debate. But the director didn't dare. Breaking it off would have confirmed the suspicion of censorship. Weidel turned the page. Here's another quote. We have to tell people what they want to hear and prepare the opposite internally. She read slowly, each word like a stitch, signed by an employee whose name is familiar to all of us here. The audience in the studio gasped audibly. Merz rushed forward as if to snatch the documents from her. That's manipulation. That's taken out of context. But his voice cracked. He didn't look like a statesman, but like a man who had lost control. At that precise moment, a camera zoomed directly into his face. Beads of sweat, a nervous twitch at the corner of his mouth. Both remained calm. You see, Mr. Merz, no one has to believe me. But the viewers outside can see how you react. They can see how the moderator is sweating here. They can see that something is wrong. And that's enough to ask questions. The moderator struggled for composure. We have to move on to another topic now. No, Weidel cut him off. People have a right to know why their politicians express themselves differently behind closed doors than they do in front of the camera. The mood in the studio was electric. Viewers clapped loudly, others shouted, "Let them finish speaking." The moderator was pale. March stood like a boxer on the verge of a knockout. But then something happened that no one had expected. A viewer in the front row jumped up, pulled out his cell phone and shouted, "I just saw the document on Twitter. Someone uploaded it. The pages are exactly as they appear here, chaos." The moderator tried desperately to restore calm. Please, we can't use unconfirmed online sources." Quote, but it was too late. The internet had long since taken over, because within seconds the hashtag Weidel was trending. Screenshots were circulating, everyone was picking out passages, everyone was interpreting them differently. Whether real or fake no longer mattered. Merz realized that he had lost the upper hand. He tried to recall his authority, to lower his voice. "Ms. Weidel, you are destroying trust in our institutions with this kind of politics. That is irresponsible and dangerous." Weidel looked at him for a long time. "No, Mr. Merz, trust is being destroyed by those who say something different here than there. I'm just holding up the mirror." It was a sentence that had the effect of a blow to the debate. The studio was in a frenzy. The moderator was unable to regain control. And at that very moment, Weidel's cell phone vibrated on the table. She reached for it, read the message, and her expression changed for a brief moment. An anonymous account had written, "This is just the first layer. If you continue, we'll open the rest." She didn't let anything get in the way. Remark, but deep down she knew. She had been drawn into a game that was bigger than a TV debate. Someone was feeding her material, not to help her, but to cause chaos. But the evening was far from over, because in the next few minutes it would become clear that not only Merz and the moderator, but also Weidel herself had long been trapped. Friends, this is where things really get dicey. In part 3, you will find out what is behind the anonymous messages, how Merz is desperately trying to regain control, and why the real plot twist is yet to come. Write in the comments whether you think Weidel is part of a plot or whether she herself is being used. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss it. The studio was a powder keg after the second half of the debate. While the cameras switched to the commercial break, there was complete chaos behind the scenes. Assistants rushed into the control center with cell phones. Social media teams called out numbers and the editors were frantically discussing whether the program should continue at all. Alice Weidel sat alone at her seat. The folder lay closed in front of her. Her hands rested on it like a trophy. But thoughts were whirling in her head. She couldn't get the message on her cell phone out of her head. "This is just the first layer. If you continue, we'll open the rest." Whoever had leaked these documents had long since controlled the pace. Friedrich Merz, on the other hand, stood at the edge of the stage with his arms crossed. He was talking excitedly to two advisors, who looked pale in the face. Quote, "We need to find out immediately where she got these documents from," he hissed. "If this is real, we have a leak. If it's fake, we have an even bigger problem." The moderator wiped the sweat from his forehead as he frantically spoke to the director on the phone. "We're losing control," he muttered. "If this continues, we'll be part of a scandal." Quote, his eyes flicked to Weidel, who looked at him calmly, as if she knew more than she was letting on. Then came the return from the break. The cameras panned back onto the stage. Millions of viewers were watching live. Hashtags trended worldwide, clips went viral. Everyone wanted to know what was really in this folder. Weidel spoke first. Her voice was calm but cutting. "There are forces that want these documents to not see the light of day. But that's exactly what makes them even more important." Merz leaned forward, his voice deep and tense. "Ms. Weidel, you know yourself that what you're doing here is extremely dangerous. You're destroying trust by allowing yourself to be used by anonymous sources." A murmur went through the audience. There it was. The admission that Merz believed she was being used, but instead weakening Weidel made her stronger. "Let them use it," she smiled coldly, "or expose the truth. Which of us is more afraid of this folder?" The moderator tried to intervene. "We cannot confirm whether these documents are genuine. Please consider the consequences. But Weidel interrupted him. Exactly, you cannot confirm it, but neither can Mr. Merz, and that alone speaks volumes. The studio was in a frenzy. Some viewers applauded loudly, others shouted in confusion. The debate had long since gotten out of control, but then something happened. A member of the control room stormed onto the stage with a piece of paper and whispered in the moderator's ear. His face turned to ashes. "We have a problem," he stammered. "The documents are now circulating online in full." A moment of shock. Millions of viewers found out about it simultaneously on their mobile phones. Screenshots, PDFs, entire pages, everything was online. Merz finally lost his composure. "This is a targeted attack," he shouted. His voice squeaked. "An attack on our democracy. Someone here has a plan and Ms. Weidel is playing into his hands." But as he spoke, Weidel's cell phone vibrated again. A new message. "Well done, but remember, you are only the beginning." She felt her heart racing. Was she really just a pawn? Who was pulling the strings in the background? Was it a whistleblower who wanted to expose mixed situations or someone who wanted to destroy trust in politics as a whole? The audience could feel the tension. The moderator tried desperately to steer the debate back to the issues at hand. "Please, we have to get back to the substantive politics. This is about the future of Europe." No, but no one was listening to him anymore. All eyes were on Weidel and Merz. Then Weidel said the sentence that changed everything. "Maybe this isn't a fight between Mr. Merz and me at all. Maybe we are both victims of a bigger game." The room fell silent. Even Merz was speechless for a moment. For the first time, Weidel did not sound like the attacker, but like someone who was threatened herself. Quote, "Are you saying," the moderator asked cautiously, "that you know who these documents come from?" Weidel nodded slowly. "I received them, anonymously, and I used them as if they weren't about me at all, but to make a fool of us all." Quote. A murmur went through the audience. Merz stared at her, his breathing heavy. "That means," he muttered, "we're both in the same trap." At that moment, her cell phone vibrated again, this time loud enough that even the microphones picked it up. The display flashed, the message visible for a split second, and everyone could read it. "The final act begins." The studio erupted in an uproar. Viewers jumped to their feet, cameras zoomed, social media exploded. IEL slowly put the cell phone aside. She knew this was no coincidence. Someone was controlling the game live in front of millions of eyes, and the finale would change everything. Friends, this is exactly the moment when everything comes to a head. In part 4, you will find out who is really behind the anonymous messages, why Merz and the moderator panicked, and how the debate ends in a way that no one could have foreseen. Write to me in the comments, believe me. Do you think there is a real wizard blower, or is this all a setup to throw politics into chaos? Subscribe so you don't miss the finale. The seconds after the last anonymous message felt like an eternity. Millions of viewers had seen the words, "The final act begins," on Weidel's cell phone. It was as if an invisible director had perfectly orchestrated the moment to achieve maximum impact. The moderator looked pale and overwhelmed. His hands were shaking as he tried to speak into the camera. "Ladies and gentlemen, we need to quickly assess the situation." But his voice failed him. He knew that he had long since lost control of the program. Merz stared at Weidel as if searching her face for an answer. His voice was rough, almost brittle. "Ms. Weidel, if you really don't know who leaked these documents to him, then we are both caught in the same trap. And then tonight someone achieved what they wanted. To publicly humiliate us both." Both of them returned his gaze. For a moment, she didn't seem like the aggressor, but like someone who felt the same fear. "Maybe," she said quietly, "it's not about us at all, but about destroying trust in politics as a whole." The audience was silent, no murmurs, no applause, just tense silence. Everyone suspected that this was the turning point, and then it happened. The screen in the studio flickered again. This time without warning. A series of documentaries appeared, automatically faded in. Not only about Mars, but also about Weidel. Internal emails, strategy papers, notes from conversations, both of them were exposed. The moderator jumped up. "We have to stop," he shouted into the control room, but the control room was powerless. Someone had taken control, whose face froze. "This is an attack on both of us." His voice squeaked, but this time it was not only panic, but also anger. Weidel stood up, took a step closer to the podium. She felt that she had to act. Millions of pairs of eyes were looking at her. "Yes," she said loudly. "This is an attack, but not from me, not from Mr. Mars, but from someone who wants us to tear each other apart until no one outside has any more trust in this system." She reached for the microphone, her voice growing firmer. "Look closely. It doesn't matter whether it concerns Mars or Weidel, the pattern is the same. Someone takes internal notes, blows them up, posts them online, and we become actors in someone else's script." The audience began to clap, hesitantly at first, then loudly. Mars now also stepped up to the podium. He took a deep breath through his gaze. "I made mistakes. I hesitated, reacted like someone who has something to hide. But tonight it's not about whether Alice Weidel or Friedrich Merz is right. It's about whether we allow our democracy to be manipulated from the outside." For the first time, the two stood side by side, shoulder to shoulder, an image that no one would have expected. The moderator swallowed, trying to regain his role. "So you mean this is a targeted campaign, because Mikte, it's not a revelation, it's a staging, and we're not allowed to play along anymore." Mars added, "That's why I demand here and now, that an independent panel of experts, not in a partisan or political manner, examines where this data comes from and who is behind it. We must not allow ourselves to be divided." The studio erupted. Applause erupted. This time not just from a few, but from almost all of the guests. It was the moment when a scandalous debate turned into a united front against an invisible enemy. Weidel's cell phone vibrated again. She raised it and switched the camera on it so that everyone could see it. A final message appeared: "You understand, the game is over." And then the overlays went blank. No new documents, no hack. It was all over, as suddenly as it had begun. The director announced, "We have control back." The moderate Hermite breathed a sigh of relief, but his hands were still shaking. Weidel put the folder aside as if it were nothing more than an empty symbol. "Sometimes," she said into the camera, "even the toughest opponents have to recognize that they can only prevail if they stand together for democracy, not against each other." Merz nodded slowly. "That's the only good ending we can have tonight." The audience in the studio stood up and clapped for minutes. Social media exploded again, but this time not with malice or panic, but with comments like historic, unexpected. And finally they got it. Later on the news it was, Mars and Weidel. Opponents became allies for a moment. The headlines spoke of a debate shock with a happy ending, of a joint stand against manipulation. And as the politicians drove back to their offices, one realization remained. Intrigues can destroy, or, if you have the courage to unleash them, they can lead to new strength. Dear viewers, that was the whole story. If you believe that politics often is more theater than we think, then give this video a like. Write to me in the comments whether you think such a turn of events is also possible in reality, and subscribe to the channel so that you can follow along next time.